Recording in progress.
Welcome, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting of the Somerville City Council to order. In accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the City Council may be conducted via remote participation, and please note that video and audio of this meeting is being recorded and may be shown live on local access government channels and on the City of Somerville website and will be available for future review. Will the clerk please call the roll?
This is roll call. Councillor McLaughlin.
Here.
Councillor Davis.
Here.
Councillor Wilson.
Present.
Councillor Said.
Present.
Councillor Scott. Councillor Mba. Councillor Burnley.
Present.
Councillor Klingon.
Present.
Councillor Strezzo.
Here.
Councillor Pineda-Neufeld.
Present.
Councillor Ewan-Campen.
Here.
With 9 councillors present and 2 absent, we have a quorum.
Excellent. We will begin our meeting with a moment of silence. Are there councillors wishing to say a few words about community members? Councillor Wilson.
Mr. President, not a community member, but I'd like to take a moment to remember Steve Albini, who passed away yesterday, too young at the age of 61. Normally, I would not do a remembrance for an international figure in the arts world who was from Chicago, but I know Mr. Albini's passing has impacted a significant number of those of us in Somerville. I'm one, particularly those in the local music scene. And I promise there's a Somerville angle here that I'll get to shortly. If you've never heard of Steve Albini until now, you've almost certainly heard his work. He was a talented and influential musician in his own right, particularly with his 80s band Big Black. He also made an even bigger impact in the studio as an engineer on landmark albums like Nirvana's In Utero, PJ Harvey's Rid of Me, Pixies' Surfer Rosa, recorded locally at Q Division, with Albini staying with friends on Alpine Street during the recording. True to his punk rock ethos, Steve Albini was a true iconoclast who routinely skewered the music industry from the inside. He was absolutely uncompromising throughout his entire career. He was a provocateur. He crossed the line. Late in life, he did one of the better jobs that I've seen of going back and saying I was wrong for this, and I appreciated that about him. So it's a big loss for the arts community, and yeah, I just want to put that out there.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Davis.
Thank you. I'd like to remember Ursula Chu. She was a Somerville resident for several years. She passed away recently at the age of 99. She was born in Germany and spent her professional career as a teacher. I always thought she was a French teacher, but turns out she just taught French after school at volunteer because she just loved languages and loved teaching. She was the mother of a friend of mine and a Ward 6 resident. She, up until the very end of her life, would take walks into Davis Square, and many of the pedestrian sidewalk improvements and various things that I've managed to get done over the years were initiated because Ursula would mention that here's this thing that I noticed, and when someone who's in their 90s is still able to get around, you certainly want to make sure that you remove all impediments to that so that everybody can get around. So I always admired her for that, and as I said, she just passed away recently at the age of 99. She had 3 kids and several grandkids who are in the Somerville school system, so I'd like to remember her and our best wishes to her family.
I have one as well. Ward 3, the Union Square area lost a neighborhood fixture named Bill Conrad. He passed away on April 23rd at the age of 85. Bill was born in Somerville, graduated Somerville High in 1957, and he served in the Army Medical Corps in France from 1959 to 61, and he lived for a long time on Columbus Street. And he was someone that everybody in the neighborhood knew. I actually got to know Bill because my wife rented an apartment from him, her first apartment in Somerville on Columbus. Bill was her landlord. And like everyone else that knew Bill, they remained friends forever. Many people, if you knew Bill, you might have seen him. He had a cane that had flames coming up the side, and I learned from my wife this was an old tenant had dressed up as Guy Fieri for Halloween, and that was one of his props, and he just kept it for 15 years after that. So Bill was the manager of the Orpheum Music Shop right next to Berklee College of Music. Music was a huge part of his life, and I just wanted to share a beautiful quote from his obituary in the Somerville Times. Throughout his life, his interest in the people around him, his skills as a storyteller, his receptivity to new ideas, his grounding as a listener and a confidant, and his wicked sense of humor made him a much beloved and trusted friend. To so many younger friends, he was Papa and Uncle Bill, and his neighbors will remember him in part through the endless rows of Sharon bushes and other lovely flowering plants that he installed with or without permission in our yards. Those of us lucky to have known him will carry his voice in our heads and his moral compass in our hearts. And I just want to also mention Bill was a really big supporter and benefactor of the History Project, which focuses on LGBTQ plus history in the Boston area, and asks that donations be made in his honor to that organization. So I wanted to ask that we all keep William Conrad in our hearts tonight. And I want to mention we have an agenda item coming up. They are shutting down Columbus Street on May 18th for a neighborhood party in his honor that we will be approving later. Everyone in the chambers who is able, if you will please rise for the aforementioned individuals. Thank you. You may be seated. So colleagues, we have a number of items with members of the public and staff here to speak. We're going to start after the public hearings. Item 10.1, Councillor Said has sponsored a resolution having to do with sustainability in our school buildings. After that, item 4.5 is a resolution from myself and Councillor Klingon about Uber and Lyft. After that, we're going to take up a promotion in the confirmation of appointments in the fire department. And after that, we have 7.15, which is a presentation from the Water and Sewer Department about bill paying assistance program, an update for all of us. So with that, let's go to the next item, please.
Item 1.3 is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of April 11th, 2024.
Seeing no discussion, that item is approved.
Item 1.4 is the approval of the minutes of the special meeting of April 11th, 2024.
Seeing no discussion, those minutes are approved.
Item 3.1 is a grant of location from Eversource to install 7 feet of conduit in Main Street from utility pole 146/5 to a point of pickup at 37 to 39 Main Street.
This public hearing is open. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Jackie Duffy.
Hi, how are you tonight?
Very well, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Eversource would like to install approximately 7 feet of conduit in Main Street to provide electric service to 3739 Main Street.
Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? This public hearing is closed. Are there any questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, that item is approved.
Item 3.2 is a grant of location from Eversource to install 77 feet of conduit in Clyde Street from utility pole 74/2 to a point of pickup at 13 to 15 Clyde Street.
This public hearing is open. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Ms. Duffy.
Eversource would like to install approximately 77 feet of conduit on Clyde Street. This is to provide electric service to 2 homes, number 13 and number 15 Clyde Street.
Anyone else here to speak on this item? This public hearing is closed. Seeing no questions and comments from the council, this item is approved.
Thank you. Have a nice night, everybody.
And that will bring us to the first item that we'll take out of order, which is item 10.1, a resolution by Councilors Said, Ewan-Campen, and Wilson on actions to promote students and community health and resilience in the era of climate change.
Councillor Said.
I would like to thank Councillor Ewan-Campen and Councillor Wilson for co-sponsoring this resolution. I would like to point out first that the school committee would be taking up a similar resolution during their meeting on May 20th. First, I would like to thank the Somerville Carbon Free and Healthy Schools Group. A lot of hard work in this resolution was done by their members. We will hear tonight from one of the members, Courtney Coslow, a Winter Hill parent and a Ward 5 resident. I'm excited to bring this resolution forward today. As we all know, today's youth will be affected by the impacts of climate change, and it's our duty to mitigate and help adapt to these impacts. The city's climate forward plan identifies buildings as the highest contributors to global gas emissions. In the climate forward plan, I was pleased to see that one of the goals is to set citywide emissions and renewable energy standards for all existing and new city and school buildings. So this was in the latest version. The first one did not have anything about schools, so I was pleased to see that. However, there is no concrete plan or timeline on how the city will reduce school-based carbon emissions. The asks in this resolution are a first step. There's 3 asks. 1, by July 1st, 2025, convene an interdisciplinary team to conduct a comprehensive study of the Somerville Public School buildings in order to create a 10-year comprehensive plan for decarbonization of building systems and improvement of building envelope performance. 2, by July 1st, 2025, adopt appropriate measures and practices to assess, monitor, and maintain the healthfulness of each school's physical environment. And 3, starting with the 2024-2025 school year, report annually by July 1st to the City Council any updates on measures and practices taken to assess, monitor, maintain, and improve the healthfulness of the school's physical environment. In terms of funding, Sarah Ross from Undaunted K-12 that is sponsored at the last school building facilities and maintenance meeting did a whole presentation on federal and state funding incentives available to offset costs and help with the out-of-pocket costs. Lastly, I encourage everyone to watch that presentation if you have not done that already. Lastly, I will add that as someone who spent years as a classroom teacher in both the old high school building and the new one, I strongly believe that healthy buildings make healthy students, and investing in all of our school buildings is part of equity and justice work. And today I would like to sponsor first Courtney Coslow, and then Kay Mamo.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor. Welcome, please.
Hello, hi, I'm Courtney Coslow, 11 Glenwood Road in Ward 5. Professionally, I develop affordable housing that is environmentally positive for low-income households. Personally, I'm a parent and a governing board member at the Winter Hill Community Innovation School. I'm an active Somerville resident and a climate activist. I'm a commissioner on the Somerville Commission for Energy Use and Climate Change, a member on the newly created school building committee for Winter Hill, and a founding member of the Somerville Carbon-Free and Healthy Schools Coalition. I'm here tonight because I have a vision for a Somerville in which our schools are vibrant examples of equitable climate resilience, where infrastructure and curriculum work in harmony to protect students from and prepare them for the effects of climate change, and where our schools serve as community resources, providing safe and healthy carbon-negative buildings and green spaces where students thrive. As a Winter Hill parent, I know firsthand what happens when buildings are an afterthought and no comprehensive capital plans are in place. When a new Winter Hill school building is built, the new Somerville stretch code will require it be designed to meet stringent passive house standards. The mayor has also publicly committed that all new school buildings will be all electric, both fantastic outcomes. As a result, the new Winter Hill building will be airtight, energy efficient, with healthy, clean, filtered, fresh indoor air quality. At the same time, the building will serve as an inspiration and a learning tool for the entire school community. But what about the remaining school buildings in the city? The same oversight and neglect have been paid to their upkeep that led to the total failure of Winter Hill. Major mechanical systems are failing at Somerville schools in ways that have led to emergency and ad hoc responses and continue to limp buildings along with expensive Band-Aids. Simply replacing a school's mechanical system, as is planned at several school buildings right now, without looking at the building as a whole system and addressing air sealing, insulation, and ventilation issues, result in oversized mechanical systems that are expensive to install and to operate, and therefore preclude further future whole building energy reduction efforts. This approach does nothing to improve the health and quality of life for the students, teachers, and staff, while hurting the climate and thereby the future of the students the buildings are meant to support. Students spend the majority of their childhood inside school buildings. Educational outcomes have been proven to dramatically increase in buildings due to improved student health from healthy ventilation and indoor air quality that come when you do a whole building renovation and not just a one-off mechanical upgrade. As Councilor Said noted, in the Somerville Climate Forward Plan update that the mayor released 2 weeks ago, Somerville has committed to meet net zero emissions by 2050 of carbon. According to the report, 63% of citywide carbon emissions come from buildings, and 78% of municipal carbon emissions come from energy use and municipal buildings. And of that 78%, 2/3 come from schools. Additionally, after teacher salaries, school building energy costs are the school district's next highest expenditure. The city's admirable and important climate goals cannot be met without tackling school buildings head-on. Tackling school buildings head-on makes our city's robust climate goals more achievable, would have a positive long-term impact on the city's operating budget while simultaneously positively impacting the health and future of our city's children and the people who have committed their lives to their education. Yet, the city has no comprehensive capital plan for school buildings and has made no concrete commitments to environmental standards or goals. We must do better. We must not repeat our past mistakes. We must move forward starting today in a way that rights our wrongs and protects our children's futures. This resolution starts us on the path to that. We have no time to spare. Please pass this resolution tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilor, you have another speaker to sponsor as well?
Next, Kay Mamo.
Welcome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kay Mo. I live in Powderhouse Square. I am here speaking on behalf of the Somerville Educators Union. I professionally work at a nonprofit called Leadership for Educational Equity, where we work on advancing and building leaders who believe in K-12 equity. So this work is very important to me, and I'm also a newly Fair Housing Commission member. The Somerville Educators Union offers its strong support of this resolution and all city action to rapidly decarbonize and electrify our school buildings, improve energy efficiency, and most importantly, provide world-class indoor air quality and healthful learning conditions to our students and staff. Thank you.
Thank you. The entire council would like to sign on. Excellent. Councilor Klingon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank the speakers for coming up this evening. Certainly, thanks to Ms. Kozlow for lending her expertise in this area to better the future for our children in our school building. So it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Hear, hear. So we'll refer this item to the Committee on School Buildings. Thank you, Councilor Said, for your leadership on this, and thank you for everyone for being here tonight. Next item, please.
Excellent. So the next item that will be taken out of order is item 4.5, a resolution by Councilors Ewan-Campen and Klingon in support of an act establishing protections and accountability for transportation network companies and delivery network companies' workers.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank Councilor Klingon for the collaboration on this. So all of us know that Uber and Lyft and the delivery apps like that have spent years and years denying the fact that the people who do all of the work, the drivers, are actually employees. And this is not a technical misclassification, a bureaucratic distinction. This means that over the years, these workers have been systematically denied hundreds of millions of dollars in benefits that they are entitled to. Back in 2020, our Attorney General, who's now our Governor, Maura Healey, filed a lawsuit alleging that Uber and Lyft illegally denied employee status to these drivers, allowing them to skirt employment laws in Massachusetts and denying them benefits and subjecting the workers to wage theft. And that trial is scheduled to start this month. And just a week ago, our state auditor released a report that calculated that this misclassification of workers has cost the state over $105 million in workers' compensation, over $125 million in unemployment insurance, and $36 million in family and medical leave. That is money that is earned by these workers that has been denied by them, by these companies. This has had enormous effects on Massachusetts residents, and it is no surprise that Uber and Lyft have poured millions of dollars into political campaigns to try to get around basic employment law, including Lyft making the single biggest campaign contribution in Massachusetts history to a ballot question, which was ultimately ruled unconstitutional, thank God. But make no mistake, they are not going to stop trying, and they are trying again to get on this year's ballot. Right now at the State House, there are serious efforts to address this issue once and for all, and this resolution is in support of a bill filed by Senator Lydia Edwards and in the House by Rep. Vargas, which would make it crystal clear that these workers are employees and that they deserve the same basic benefits that any other employee does. It would preserve the right to unionize, it prevents price gouging, and it includes basic public safety reforms like panic buttons. So this is Senate Bill 627, House Bill 1157. It has been endorsed by the Massachusetts AFL-CIO, by the Teamsters, by other labor groups, and the purpose of this resolution is to add Somerville to that list. We will be the first city to come out in support of this legislation, and after Councillor Klingon, I'd like to sponsor a local resident named Paul Weiskell, correct me if I'm wrong on your name, to speak on the item.
Councilor Klingon?
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, happy to co-sponsor this this resolution for this legislation. I'll just speak as somebody who's worked in the service industry in many different facets, hotel, restaurant. I worked for a number of years in the livery business, and one of the first companies I worked for, I started when it was independent contractors, and then they switched to an employee situation. Now, make no mistake, that wasn't done at the behest of the drivers. That was certainly, it behooved the management and the owners of the company to do that. It seemed to be for them more economically feasible at that time. So don't think for one second that the conditions that are currently in place right now are for anybody's benefit other than the shareholders. I mean, they made this clear to these companies have made it clear in their IPO meetings that they are going to continue to cut driver wages until the point where the drivers revolt. And I hope the drivers are ready to revolt. I know a number of them are, and I just, they run these ads on TV where they talk about flexibility. That's all a farce. If you were truly an independent contractor, you would, first of all, they take 70% of drivers' earnings, and drivers have no recourse at that. These companies, they used to give about 80% to the driver. That's no longer the case. Sure, you can choose when and where to turn the app off, but once it's on, Uber directs their behavior, telling them where and when to go and how much they will earn. Drivers have been forced to do money-losing rides, and that's not an independent contractor. If an independent contractor, if that was a truly independent contractor, they could say, "Sorry, you aren't paying enough for this ride. I'm going to decline it." But that's not the case, and they also just do random shutoffs of drivers. So, this is not a truly freely independent environment to work in, and they're basically leaving the drivers to cover the costs of the full amount for Social Security and insurance and other things. And it's time that they pay the drivers what they're worth, and those drivers deserve the protections that every other worker has. So I support this legislation. I support the unionization of those drivers, which I have in the past, and I'm happy to yield to the good representative from the community. Thank you.
Welcome. Please share your name as well so we know.
Thank you. My name is Paul Weiskell. I live at 33 Beacon Street. I'm an organizer with the Teamsters, and I know firsthand why employment status is important and the effect on organizing. So I've worked for 2 moving companies in Somerville over the last 10 years or so. The first moving company, I started making $12.50, no benefits. It was unsafe. We were worked to the bone, and going through that experience, I realized that that wasn't something I could make a career out of. And I was able to get a job at another moving company in Somerville that was organized. Overnight, I had my wages and benefits more than quadruple. I was able to think about retirement, a pension, health care, and all of that was because these workers had the rights and protections of employees and the ability to organize. So I'm also an organizer for the Teamsters Amazon division. So now I get to see how the Uberification and the gigification of the economy is probably one of the biggest issues that we're dealing with right now. So I'm here to speak in favor of this resolution that gives us an opportunity to really take a stand against big tech, against all these app companies, which are really trying to put in stone this misclassification. With this misclassification, they get to avoid their workers using labor laws that have been fought for generations. Like was pointed out by the counselors, they get to avoid paying a total of $266 million into programs that are meant to help workers. And strong workers in good companies are not misclassified. They're not seen as independent contractors. They're seen as employees. And if you ask anybody who works for these app companies, ask them who controls their day, they're going to say, it's not me. I don't control the hours, or I don't control the company, or what it was stated before. You don't control. You don't have control. The other thing I wanted to kind of reach back to and mention in connection with the Teamsters is there's been a history of change in employment or change in industry standards that massively affects workers in industries. So with the Teamsters, we have the experience of deregulation in the trucking industry. 50 years ago, being a truck driver was a great job. You had massive amounts of union workers who had good working class jobs, were able to raise families, put kids into college, buy houses, and live that American dream. But through deregulation, through the change in industry standards and employment law, that good career is gone. And we see this push by gig companies as another attack on good industry jobs. We believe if we maintain the right for these workers to organize, that they can create these jobs into the good jobs that build strong families and strong communities. We've seen it, the exact effect is seen with like green and yellow cab right in Somerville. Those are good jobs, but now they have to compete with these app and these Uber and gigified companies. So what I'm asking is to pass this resolution, support this resolution, Senate Bill 627 and House Bill 1158, an act establishing protections and accountability for TNC and DNC workers. This is going to, again, affirm the employment status for drivers and provides a pathway to unionization, prevents price gouging, requires panic buttons for both drivers and passengers, and allows local control and flexibility. And again, the last thing I'll say again is this provides the pathway to unionization and organization. We're not asking for legislation that gives special treatment to workers. We're asking for legislation that protects the right for workers to assert their own power. And if we can do that in this specific sector, then hopefully more workers are going to see it. Right now, in the private sector, only about 10% of workers are organized. We need to create an environment where workers are encouraged to organize and encouraged to exercise their own power, and I believe that resolution kind of adds to that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Wilson, Councilor Scherzo, Councilor Burnley. The whole council wants to sign on. Madam Clerk. All right. Next item. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Burnley.
Thank you, through the Madam President. I just want to offer my thanks to the sponsors of this resolution. I think this is incredibly important that we're, one, living up to Somerville's reputation as a union town, which I know for many years has been fought for by so many residents and members of this council. The numbers that we heard just a moment ago from President Ewan-Campen are beyond distressing. They're disgusting. The amounts of money that is effectively being stolen from workers in this state by these mega corporations is absolutely criminal, and in a just society, we would be having conversations of, sending them to The Hague, essentially. As a former Teamster myself, I think that the Teamsters are living up to their historic role of, fighting for not only workers, but specifically, when you look at the emblem of the good gentleman who was just at the podium, it has horses on it. Because the Teamsters started with organizing horse and buggies. This is how historic of a relationship they have, specifically with workers who deliver goods and who make sure that folks get where they need to go and get the things that they need. And we live in a world right now where algorithms are controlling our lives in virtually every aspect, and in doing so, endangering us both physically and economically to the service of a very small amount of people. If we can take one step forward to help break that monopoly and serve working class residents of this city and so many more across the Commonwealth, I think that would just be a fantastic thing to do. So thank you to the folks who brought this forward, and thank you for the Teamsters for showing up tonight.
Thank you. And before we move on, let me just say, a lot of this stuff, this gigification, it can feel inevitable. It can feel like we have no control over it. Nothing is inevitable. We still live in a democracy. We get to decide what the future looks like. We do not have to let these tens of thousands of workers in our state get screwed over. So thank you, colleagues. This item is approved.
And that brings us to item 6A, a report of the Committee on Confirmation of Appointments and Personnel Matters, meeting on May 1st, 2024.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our committee met on Wednesday, May 1st. It was a swift 22-minute meeting. All 5 members were present. We approved the minutes of our previous meeting. We kept 2 items in committee, which were the 2 confirmations for the Board of Health. And the item we took up that evening is the promotion of Charles D. Richardson to the position of Fire Captain. For those who don't know, Lieutenant Richardson, he's been in the department for 22 years, holds several rescue certifications, including a real focus on fire prevention, which was really interesting for our committee to talk about. Currently serving as acting captain in fire prevention. My colleagues asked really great questions of Lieutenant Richardson, including what he's learned in the role in the last 22 years, how to support our firefighters, how would he handle his role with respect to discipline, in? What has he learned? What is he looking forward to if appointed in this promotion? And what would he like to prioritize? So I encourage you all to take a look at that meeting or read the minutes for more details. But just really thorough answers from the candidate, and all 5 members of the committee unanimously approved that confirmation. And so with that, I would like this committee report to be accepted as submitted.
Seeing no discussion, that committee report is accepted.
And that appointment is now ready, and we'll swear in the candidate.
You all are welcome to get as close as you want. Come right in.
All right, so before you sign, you gotta agree. So hang on just a second there. Let me have you stand right over here for me and raise your right hand. All right. Do you solemnly affirm that you will faithfully and honorably perform the duties incumbent on you as a captain, of the Somerville Fire Department, City of Somerville, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes, I do.
All right, then you'll sign right up here. And then it's official. Congratulations. Woo.
Folks, we're going to take a recess. If folks want to take pictures, make yourselves at home. All right, we'll call this meeting back to order. Next item, please.
And the next item is item 7.15, a communication of the mayor conveying an update on the development of a water bill ratepayer assistance program.
Excellent. So we have a presentation from our Water and Sewer Department. We're going to let that presentation go all the way through, and then we're going to take questions from counselors if there are any. If the conversation is getting way too long, we'll send it to committee. But questions are certainly in order after the presentation. So with that, take it away, Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Council, and everyone else watching and present. Good evening. Happy National Drinking Water Week. And we appreciate you also considering item 7.13, the proclaiming Somerville recognizing it as Drinking Water Week. And it's very fitting that we are before you during this week to provide you with an update on our progress with the Water and Sewer Ratepayer Assistance Program. We thank you for this opportunity and the time. Tonight, we will be going over a number of items to bring you up to speed with where we currently are and what's left to do with this project. We will cover the driving factors and overview of the project, our current affordability scenario, the community outreach performed, and our findings to date, some recommendations we are presented with, and potential next steps. We would like to start off by addressing what precipitated this project. We understand and have heard from you, the residents and ratepayers of the city, regarding concerns over increasing water and sewer rates. However, I want to clarify that the increases we are addressing are not related to the recent one-time adjustments seen in some bills in conjunction with the city's water meter replacement program. The rate increases we are discussing this evening are the result of factors that include the MWRA's increasing assessments to deliver clean drinking water and treat the city's wastewater, as well as the City of Somerville's commitment to overhauling our aging infrastructure to protect our community from future flooding, continue providing clean and reliable drinking water, and maintain regulatory compliance. In addition to the city's finance team working to mitigate and minimize the need for rate increases, we also solicited a request for proposals to determine the best ways for us to assist ratepayers in adjusting to higher rates. We selected Raftellus for their experience in developing programs and their robust communication and outreach plan. With that, I would like to introduce you to Raftellus's Vice President, Dave Fox.
Thank you, Dimitri. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Fox, Vice President with Raftellus. Raftellus is the largest firm in the country, predominantly focused on water and sewer rate, financial related matters with a strong emphasis on affordability. It's one of my area of expertise, especially within the last few years where this has become one of the more hot button topics in the water and sewer industry. It's what I'm spending most of my days thinking about. Very excited to be here with you this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to give you an update on our project, where we are to date, what we've accomplished, and where we'd like to go, and obviously receive some feedback from you. I realize this is an incredibly important project, an incredibly important initiative for the city, and I'm privileged to be a part of the team trying to find some solutions here. I want to give you the executive summary of the remainder of my presentation. So if you only have one takeaway, I'll get that out up front, and then I'll walk you through some of the details, how we got to this point. We started the project thinking that we were going to implement a standard customer assistance program, a ratepayer-funded customer assistance program, and I'll get into the details of what we thought we were going to do later. But what we've decided or actually determined through our research at this point in the project of where we are is that a standard customer assistance program is probably not right for the city of Somerville. But that does not mean that we don't have solutions. There are plenty of solutions, and I'll walk you through them as we move through this presentation, of ways in which that we can promote equity and affordability within the city's water and sewer bills. I first wanted to kind of set the stage as we walk through this to kind of fill you on where we are and what we've done and where we're going into the future, is just to give a brief overview of what our study was attempting to do from the beginning. I kind of broke this up into 4 high-level steps. Step 1 was just to come into the city and understand what the issues are, right? We wanted to do a lot of data analyses, looking at income levels, looking at the demographics of the city in terms of their residents, where customers are residing. This is no news to you, but a predominantly multifamily housed community. I would like to define that. I'm going to say multifamily several times during this presentation, and what I mean by that is anything from a 2-family property up to the largest multifamily apartment complex that you have in a city. That's what I'm defining as multifamily. Looking at how customers are being billed currently, how that affects different customer types, small customers, large customers, single-family residential homes, those multifamily properties, how usage characteristics change among them, and how your rate structure is impacting those customers, and any potential inequities. And we'll get into some issues there and potentially some solutions as well. We also wanted to get a good handle on what are current programs that are available to the residents today. Not only within the water and sewer space, but also outside of that, because low income is low income. They're having a tough time paying every single one of their bills, not just water and sewer, and any dollar that we can free up is a dollar that can be spent elsewhere, and that's fantastic. So we wanted to understand what residents are able to take advantage of today in terms of programs. We then took that a step further, and we didn't want to just come in as Raftellus, taking our own understanding and our own research or talking to only water and sewer. We wanted to go out there and talk to a lot of different folks and hear what their firsthand issues are and hear firsthand from them, or surrogates for different people. And I have a few slides on that. We just wanted to hear perspectives directly from residents, directly from representative residents within the city. Rather than making our own assumptions, we wanted to hear firsthand what is going on. And also, I talked about in step 1, understanding what those current programs are. We wanted to kind of gauge what the general awareness is of those programs currently. Is there high awareness, low awareness? Preview, there's fairly low awareness of those programs currently, and we might be able to grow that. Where we are currently is in step 3 of considering what we thought were going to be maybe assistance programs, but I would consider this considering solutions to providing equity and promoting affordability within the city for water and sewer and all the residents. We developed pros and cons of each of these different initiatives, and we did not leave, Demetrius told me from the very beginning at our kickoff meeting that we had in, I believe, January at this point, do not leave anything off the table. We looked at every potential option, and we scrutinized it. We did our due diligence to understand what are the legal constraints, what are the administrative constraints, what's actually going to provide relief. We don't want to just implement something that sounds good, it has a fancy name, that it's going to provide relief, and it doesn't actually do that. We want to implement something that is going to provide relief from all the perspectives of the residents. And I want to mention here that we're thinking about this very holistically. We're not looking at just one group of customers. Predominantly speaking, just based on the demographics of the city, your low-income customers are mostly residing in multifamily properties, but that does not mean that you don't have low-income folks that are living in single-family residential homes. It does not mean that you don't have low-income small businesses that we need to keep into consideration. This is very holistic. We're trying to keep the entire community and all residents in our mind as we're crafting these solutions. So that's kind of where we are currently as this step 3. We're going to give you an update as I walk through the remainder of this presentation, which I will do so as efficiently as possible. I know you have a long agenda. And then we obviously want to receive some feedback from you all, continue to receive feedback as we move through the remainder of this project, and start working towards some sort of implementation, a design of exactly what it is we're going to implement, and start moving in that direction with earnest and doing the data integrity work that we need to do, the communication, not only to you, but the public as well, of what we're doing and why and how it's going to impact them, and ensure when we do go live that something is done correctly and we know that it's right before it gets implemented. Go to the next slide, please. So I just want to spend a couple of slides talking about that communication because from the very beginning in our interview that we had and our kickoff meeting, it was abundantly clear to us at Raftellus that communication, receiving feedback from residents and the public and constituents and different surrogate groups was incredibly important. And that was music to our ears. We're always communicating to our clients that they should be communicating more, so it's great that the city wanted us to communicate with folks. When it comes to affordability, there's generally speaking, some hard to reach customers, if you will, with regard to speaking to them, getting them, having direct conversations. Multifamily residents, folks that are just trying to make ends meet, that are working multiple jobs, non-native English speakers, low-income constituents, again, not just residential customers, but potentially non-residential as well, small businesses. In order to do that, we are having direct conversations with some members of the public, but we also reached out to surrogates. First and foremost, you. We had conversations with many of you directly, the city councilors. I want to pause and thank you for doing that. It was incredibly refreshing that we got as many of you as we did to take time out of your busy days and have conversations with us and allow us to ask you questions and provide us your perspective as city councilors and your perspective of listening to your constituents and what their concerns are. That was incredibly valuable information for us to start crafting solutions going forward. And I will tell you, it's a bit of an anomaly to have as much engagement as we did from the city council compared to some other communities we work with. So thank you very much for your input. Through that process, we also spoke to your constituent services or your 311, your council on aging. We're working through the process now of reaching out and communicating directly with tenants, not only residential but also non-residential or business tenants, talking directly to property managers to understand how they're dealing with billings, what is changing, how they're being impacted, how the tenants are being impacted. We spoke with the Office of Sustainability and Environment, and then OSPCD, Housing Division, Office of Housing Stability, Economic Development, and more. This is not an exhaustive list by any means, and it's also not exhaustive we're not ending our communication and our outreach today. This is going to continue through the remainder of the project as we start rolling things out and get a finer point on what it is we're doing and what those solutions are. We want to receive feedback of what folks think about that. So our communication efforts are by no means done. Go to the next slide, thank you. Just to distill this down with those communication and those conversations that we had, what we learned through that, and not attributing this to any one person or any one group, this is just a distillation, kind of a compilation. We heard very similar things throughout all the conversations that we had. First and foremost, something that was very common was what Demetrius already mentioned in his introduction, is the conflation of the issue of folks receiving one-time bills after the meter replacement program and just the general rise in water and sewer bills over time to pay for infrastructure new and replacement and inflation and things of that nature. Those are, I'm not discounting or putting more weight on one issue or another, but in my mind those are two very separate issues and they are being commingled very frequently. We also heard that property owners are the most that are impacted by increased rents and at times, increased water and sewer bills, and at times those increases are passed down directly to the tenants if those properties are submetered, and in other times those bills are not passed down directly, they're probably picked up in the rent somehow. And a question came up often when we were having these conversations of, if you are able to provide relief to a multifamily property, how can we guarantee that that relief is going to make its way down to the tenants and those residents who were most concerned about providing benefit to? Not only concerned, but most concerned. I will mention on the next slide as we get through this that there are other assistance programs that could potentially, as I mentioned before, any dollar freed up, we want to be able to communicate that and let folks know about it as frequently as we possibly can. There is little to no awareness of those existing programs. The city was administering LIWAP money, very similar to the heating assistance LIHEAP for the last year or so. Very little awareness awareness of that folks could be provided relief on their water and sewer bills. We want to make sure that if there are programs out there that people are aware of them and they're taking advantage of them. There is just across the board significant interest in doing something, right? Enhancing equity and promoting affordability within the city with regard to water and sewer. The question just becomes exactly how do we do that, and that's what we're trying to work through right now. We also heard that billing triannually or only every 4 months is potentially exacerbating the issue. Somebody receiving a bill every 4 months that's much greater magnitude than it would be monthly billing. You know, they might be thinking, how am I going to pay for this bill? It just puts a bit of a harder cash burden on some properties with a larger bill only every, once every 4 months. And we also heard, which we agree with 100%, that communication is absolutely critical, and diversifying that communication, both with regard to language, but also the mode of that communication, the format, how it's being dispersed. We can't just make the assumption that everybody is on the internet and be able to check email and go online. We need to be cognizant of that and ensure that our communication is as diverse as possible, so we're reaching as many residents as possible today and well into the future. Just a quick slide on these other existing assistance programs within the city. There's rental utility assistance, non-housing expenses administered, transportation through the taxi voucher program, LIHEAP, I just mentioned that before, fuel assistance, and then there are assessing exemptions, 41C and 17D, that do give a 25% discount on water bills for low-income seniors. Again, there's a process that needs to go through for that, but these programs are available, and as this list of programs hopefully grows over time and the amount of assistance being provided, we want to make sure that the city is doing the greatest degree possible their best to get this information out into the residents' hands, and they have it in their information, and they can apply for these programs and be administered as much of this assistance as possible. So that kind of gets us through step 2, right? We did a bunch of research onto painting a picture of what's going on in the city of Somerville currently, understanding demographics and consumption information, how different customer types are being billed, what there may be in terms of inequities there. We went out and talked to a lot of different people, surrogate groups, directly with customers or residents, with you, understanding what your concerns are, you being city council, that is. So we're on step 3 now, where we're kind of distilling all that information down to determine what might be the best solution or solutions going forward to address this problem. Bear with me for 1 second, please. So when I spoke earlier of that punchline, that executive summary, that a ratepayer-funded customer assistance program might not be right for the city, what I meant by that, and I'll distill this down into what the city asked for. So the city asked for an income-based eligibility assistance program that would provide a discount on water and sewer bill based on income eligibility, and determined what kind of income that is, but in general, income eligibility, whereas all non-income eligible customers would be charged a little bit more to generate the funds necessary to provide a discount to income eligible customers. The city asked for that program to be as easily administered as possible to reduce the administrative burden, not only on the city side to reduce costs, but also on the resident side to be able to take advantage of that program with not much red tape or having to fill out tons of paperwork to be able to do that. It was important, obviously, to try to ensure equity for tenants as well, and that is the hard problem in the affordability space with regard to customer assistance programs, is reaching tenants who are not directly paying a water or sewer bill to the city and are paying so through either their rent or to their property manager, and there's not a direct economic relationship between the tenant and the water and sewer departments. What we've determined over the course of the project, doing all that research that I mentioned, keeping in mind what the city was looking for, a few things. One is the Massachusetts Department of Revenue has determined that the city cannot charge one group of customers more in order to give another group of customers less of a bill. They cannot generate additional revenue from one group of income ineligible customers and then give that revenue to income eligible customers. That is illegal in Massachusetts currently. If that were not a reason enough not to implement a ratepayer funded customer assistance program as determined based on the left side of this screen, there are some other reasons, predominantly being that even if we were able to administer a program of this nature as I described, it'd be very hard to get that relief to those tenants because they're not paying that bill directly. And what we might be doing is only providing relief to property owners, so low-income folks in single-family residential homes. Most property managers are not going to be income eligible to get this bill discount, and even if they were, how do we guarantee that that's going to get passed down in terms of savings to the tenants? So what this might actually cause is doing more harm than good, and those multifamily properties actually paying more than they would have without this program being administered, which is the exact opposite of what we're trying to accomplish here. With 80% of the properties that water and sewer provide service to are multifamily. And something I'll mention here, and I'll get into it more in the next slide, is that the current unit prices on average for multifamily properties are higher than single-family residential homes. And I'll explain that if we, in the next couple slides, the slide after this. So what our recommendations are, with all that information distilled down, the research, what we think we can and can't do, what we think is actually going to provide solutions for the city. We've put together kind of 4 high-level recommendations for a path forward, and obviously we're here tonight to receive your input on that. Number 1, first and foremost, is make equitable changes to the rate structure that water and sewer charges customers today. Make modifications that I have an entire slide that I'll speak to bring more equity to how customers are being charged currently. We also want to diversify the revenue sources, so bring more equity to miscellaneous fees and charges, also generate more revenue from miscellaneous fees and charges, and any dollar that is generated from other charges will not have to come from retail water and sewer customers in order to pay for any increases going forward. We want to potentially establish new policies and practices that are more customer-facing, and I'll get into those. And then I've probably driven this point home too many times already now, but I'll continue to do so. Enhance communication, expand communication, communicate, and I'll get into that more. So first and foremost, and I think this is going to be the biggest bang for our buck and provide the most relief in terms of creating equity and promoting affordability within the city, and this is making a rate structural change. So I'll explain this. The city recovers revenue predominantly from volumetric charges, which is the chart on the top of this slide here. This is what I would refer to as an inclining block rate structure, and that means the more you use as you step through these tiers, the more you pay per unit. These units are these tiers or blocks are broken out by CCF, which is 100 cubic feet or 748 gallons. So if we look at the water just as an example, if a customer uses 800 cubic feet over the course of their triannual 4-month bill, they would pay $5.53 for all 100 cubic feet for that bill, and then $11.26 for sewer. But for customers who go above that 8 CCF threshold, they would start then paying $6.17 for every 100 cubic foot up until 13, and then up to $8.88 and $9.30 as you move forward. So customers who are using more water are paying more on a per unit basis than those customers that pay less. This is incredibly true for multifamily properties that are just a compilation of single-family residences or different single-family units. Just by nature of their property type, they are using more consumption than a typical single-family residential home, and by nature of that higher consumption, paying higher per unit charges because their consumption is falling into these higher tiers, these higher price tiers. What we'd like to do is to diversify and make a more equitable rate structure, not assume that we have a one-size-fits-all approach like we do today, that all customers, whether they're single-family residential, multifamily residential, small businesses, larger businesses, are all going to fit in the same rate structure and it's going to treat them exactly the same, because that's not the case. We'd like to potentially make some modifications, potentially expand the customer classifications or the customer types. So we might have a specific rate structure for single-family residential homes. We might have a specific rate structure for multi-unit properties that is tailor-fit to charge them more equitably and get away from this current rate structure that you have, where these higher volume properties are paying a higher per unit rate than lower consumption properties. Within that, we can look at different structures, different tier cutoffs, maybe something vastly different than what you have today, potentially charging customers the same unit rate, whether they're used 1 CCF or they use 100 CCF, they'd pay the same unit rate rather than stepping through this system you have. All of this, and this is a incredibly data-intensive process that we need to go through to understand with 100% certainty what each property type is, what is their consumption, how are they going to be impacted by this change. It's not something that we want to enter into hastily. The last thing we want to do is roll something out that is going to potentially do more harm than good or send customers bills that are incorrect. We want to ensure that when we roll something out, we've tested it and it's accomplishing what we want it to accomplish, and that's creating more equity and providing greater affordability support for residents. I will also mention there's a fixed charge component to water and sewer, which is incredibly common in the industry. Over 90% of utilities across the country have some sort of fixed charge. We also want to identify and look at that, ensure that it's in line with industry best practices and also equitable and not creating any equity concerns currently. So recommendations 2, 3, and 4, just I summarized here on one slide, kind of broken up into 2 components. One is potential new revenue streams. First and foremost is fire protection fees. Private fire protection fees are incredibly common in the industry. Many communities around Somerville have them. By that I mean a specific fee that is levied on properties that have a private fire suppression system. The water department has incurred costs and incurs costs to have the capacity to be able to respond to the unfortunate fire event. Hopefully that does not happen, but there are costs associated with oversizing the infrastructure to be able to respond to not only just domestic usage, what people are using for bathing and brushing their teeth and washing their dishes, but also do that at the simultaneously responding to a fire event. There's a very specific cost there, and it's incredibly common in the industry to carve that out and charge those customers who are benefiting from having that fire suppression system a private fire protection charge, rather than doing what you're doing currently, which is you're recovering the cost from all of your customers, whether they have a private fire suppression system or not. So we want to potentially look into that and understand what the impacts of that are going to be. The city is currently working through a process to understand the feasibility of implementing a stormwater fee. In the study and feasibility stage of that right now, which could potentially create even more equity in the system and would create more equity in the system, something that is to be determined at this point in time. And then just adjustments to the general miscellaneous fees, turn on, turn off fees, things like of that nature, things that are outside of that normal rate structure that I talked to on the slide before. These are not huge dollar generators, but they are incredibly common, and we want to make sure that the city's charging for all the services it's providing on a miscellaneous basis, potentially make some recommendations to the city to implement new miscellaneous fees if you do not currently have them on the books, and the miscellaneous fees that you do currently have on the books, ensure that they are adequately recovering those costs, again, to provide more equity so we're not recovering revenue from our residents when it should be recovered from a very specific group of customers. And then some potential policy changes. Again, moving to monthly billing. I spoke about this earlier. We heard in our communications portion of this project that sending out bills 4 times a year is potentially exacerbating the issue. Monthly billing could help that. If folks are receiving lower magnitude bills on a monthly basis, it could be a much easier bite to take off. And we've actually seen that with utilities who have implemented monthly billing, that collections actually increase after that when it's just a little bit easier for people to pay that bill rather than getting slapped with a very high bill only 3 times a year and when they might not be expecting for it or planning for that. I will mention that monthly billing is not something that can just happen overnight. It's not a flip of a switch. This is also just like the rate design component of this potential solution. This is also a very data-intensive project. We need to understand what the billing implications are, and as well as the administrative burden of moving from billing 3 times a year to 12 months or 12 times a year. There is an administrative burden there, so we want to continue to move through that process and understand the feasibility. We want to encourage the Water and Sewer Department and the city to look out for grants, potentially to provide assistance for residents and property owners to invest into their system with water efficiency measures. So low-income toilets, thank you. I said low-income too many times tonight. Low-flow toilets, low-flow shower heads, things like that. If we can directly reduce the water consumption at a property that would maintain in perpetuity, that is going to directly reduce that property's bill. And so that'd be a long-standing measure that could potentially be implemented and something at no cost to the city and no cost to the residents. And we want to just keep our eyes and ears open for things like that. And then a formal written communications plan. The Water and Sewer Department is already working through this and doing a wonderful job of communicating. We will continue to do that over the course of this project, but it needs to continue after this project is done. Having a very diverse communications plan, again, in terms of language and the mode of that, or the format of that communication, both digital and writing, going to where people are and communicating to them, letting them know what's going on. What is the Water and Sewer Department doing? What are they working on? How is it going to impact residents? The benefits of the work that they're doing. Water and sewer is a lot of times thought of as the invisible industry. It's infrastructure underground, and people take it for granted that they just turn a knob one way and water comes out, and they don't understand all that goes into it. And I think by communicating what the Water and Sewer Department is doing, that'll help bring this city together around an incredibly important issue. If we go to the final slide, and thank you for bearing with me. I appreciate your patience. Step 4 is just the design and implementation of this, which again is going to take a lot of due diligence, data integrity work, understanding the policies, ensuring that we're actually achieving the goal that we're trying to achieve. I said at the beginning, we don't want to enter into anything hastily or potentially implement something that's going to do more harm than good. We want to ensure that when we roll something out, that it's accomplishing our goal, it's creating more equity, it's reducing bills for some customers, it's helping and enhancing affordability. And in order to do that, we need to go through and finalize what our potential customer classifications or groups of customers might be, to have not a one-size-fits-all approach to rate design, but a more tailored approach. Need to ensure that any changes that we're making in the billing structure then can work with the billing system. And those systems are talking to one another. And again, when we do go live, that bills are sent out correctly. So that's going to take some test environments to ensure that everything's working correctly. Continue to evaluate what those diversified new revenue sources might be, understand the impacts of those and how it might impact different customers, what it would mean in terms of the bottom line for not having to generate that revenue from all other rates for residents. And then communicate. That's the last time I'm going to say that. And our goal is to go live with all of these initiatives that we're working towards right now, January 1st of 2025. That is the goal, and I'll caveat caveat that with it's a goal. We're working earnestly in that direction. Obviously, we want to hear the feedback from this group this evening of where we're moving forward. What I can guarantee you, though, is that we will continue to communicate to the council, the administration, the residents as we continue to work through this incredibly important project, where we are to date, what our timeline looks like, and if anything deviates from what our goal is of January 1st, 2025, you will be the first to know that. So with that being said, again, thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I do appreciate it.
Thank you both. We'll take some questions. Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. Through you, we'll go, I guess, to Mr. Fox. We heard you say that currently, with the current rate structure that we have, it seems like multifamilies are bearing a disproportionate burden.
Yes.
Given we're talking about a zero-sum game here, then, if we were to move to the rate structure differentiated by property type, then we're talking about then shifting that so that single families are paying a higher amount.
I cannot say whether the single family would pay higher, but you're correct, it is a zero-sum game, and somebody is going to have to pay more if somebody's paying less. And what we're working through right now is trying to identify what the appropriate structure is and where that burden, because there would be a shift of burden, you're 100% correct, where that burden would fall, and is it something that is better or worse than what we're living with today?
And through you, Mr. President, to Mr. Fox again. I guess I'm curious whether, and this might be something that the folks in finance, it's on their end and it's not something you even really took up, but whether, we're talking about an enterprise fund here, we're talking about funding the work that we're doing to modernize our water and sewer system and to pay for things like the Poplar Street pump station. So these revenues we take in through our water and sewer charges are just one part of that. I'm curious whether there was any consideration of revisiting the percentages that we're doing there, and whether we're trying to put too much on ratepayers as a percentage of that funding.
Can you define what you mean by percentage?
The component, basically the amount, we're having to pay for all this work to be done, right? You know, yes, we buy water from the MWRA. We're also, the water and sewer enterprise funds, we're paying for the work to modernize our infrastructure. And we have to pay for that somehow. So revenues from water and sewer bills are one component of that, right? We bond, we do a number of different things. Mm-hmm. I'm curious whether it was within your purview here to look into whether we're trying to get too much in terms of revenue, whether the model we're using needs to be tweaked at all.
I understand what you're saying. Now, thank you for clarifying. No, that was not part of the scope of work in our project to determine the level of funding required and how much revenue is coming in and how much revenue should be coming in for either the water or sewer department.
All right, and finally, Mr. President, through you to Director Vidalis, I'm curious, you've had a windfall of revenues here in the last few months, safe to say, with all the true-ups that are happening with the bills after water meter replacements?
Through you, Mr. President, we have seen an increase in the bills. However, it's not necessarily an increase in revenue because people are delaying paying these bills. So we're approximately at where we expected to be, slightly behind, actually.
Through the President, that's interesting. But at some point, we are expecting to realize that revenue.
Through the chair, it is revenue that was anticipated had we not been doing estimates anyway, so it's not a windfall or an increase in expected revenue. It's revenue that has been lagging to come to us.
Through the President, I understand that. I'm guessing we had a rough estimate of how much water we had sent out because we bought that water from the MWRA. Given that this is being charged, though, generally at the FY24 rates, considerably higher than previous years, right, due to successive years of 2 years in a row of double-digit increases. I guess I'm curious. This all aligns with what you're expecting in terms of the projections you've been doing, the models you had, it hasn't impacted thinking at all in terms of how much you need to fund all of this?
Through you, Mr. President, we're still finalizing our finances and projected revenues and budgets, which we will be presenting soon to the council. So I don't want to misspeak before we finalize those numbers.
All right. Thanks, Mr. President.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Fox and Director Vidalis. Had a few questions on this presentation. First, Mr. Fox, were you familiar that Mass DOR rules say that we cannot charge one group of customers over another before you took on our project?
No.
With the city? You did not know that?
No.
Okay.
In fact, it was a huge surprise to one of my mentors who's been doing water and sewer rate work for over 50 years in Massachusetts, retired now. When I communicated that to him, he was incredibly shocked.
Okay. Through you, Mr. President, to Mr. Fox. I'm going on page 8. I'm sorry, page 9, pardon me. That's what I'm looking at first. I'm already hearing to from the right side of your presentation, the second bullet point, I'm already hearing from Somerville residents who are renewing their leases that are hearing from their landlords that they are now being shifted from water being inclusive in the lease to them having to independently pay, which is something that I'm sure the members of the council who have been here several years heard that anxiety coming from both landlords saying they didn't want to do it, but also that this could be a possibility, and now it's manifesting. So again, I'm already hearing about it from residents that this is a new addition to their leases.
May I comment on that?
Mr. President, through you to Mr. Fox, I'm fine with that if you are.
Through Mr. President, I'm sorry. You keep me on task of what I need to do here administratively. I would just ask, do you know if those properties are sub-metered?
Mr. President, through you to Mr. Fox, no. But I am hearing the anxiety from residents saying that this is now included in what they're being charged in their leases.
Mr. President, if I may, this is part of what we anticipate in making more active in our communication plans to educate tenants on what the submetering laws are and what their landlords are permitted to do and not to do. So this is an outreach program to increase our communication and education of the residents, particularly tenants, so they're aware of what they should be paying and under what conditions and circumstances.
Mr. President, clarification on that point. Is that okay, Councilor? When is that communication happening? Because I'm a renter. My lease is a September lease. I got an email a week ago with my rent increase. And so it's happening now. Landlords are expecting for tenants to sign the dotted line now, many, many months in advance. Is this communication going to be happening soon?
Through you, Mr. President, we don't have a definitive timeline on this communication, but this is one of the key points we want to get out. And we have to work with other departments through the city to reach the tenants, because if we include it as part of the bill, it's going to the person that is paying the bill, and often that is the landlord. So we have to develop the communication plan to enable us to be able to reach the tenants as opposed to the ratepayer, who is typically the landlord or property owner. The information is available on our website under information for landlords and tenants, but we do recognize that there's a number of tenants that don't have access to this or didn't know to look for this, even if they do have access to the internet. So we are taking that under consideration when we develop the ability to reach out and communicate this. We've relayed the information to other departments that do talk to tenants directly, but we want to be able to work with them for more broad outreach regarding this information.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you. Through you to, if I may have I have just a few more questions, and through you to Mr. Fox, have you considered inclusionary units and and how that relates when they are paying their own water bills as well? Because they are, and as I've mentioned a few times, I have actually had conversations with inclusionary affordable housing units, when we talk about equity, that are begging to get out of their leases because there are agreements with some of the inclusionary units where they have to pay their own water bills. And I don't know what the conversation was, Mr. Fox, with you and SCC or some of our affordable housing complexes, say Cobble Hill or other units. I don't think Cobble Hill pays their water, but units that do. What does SEC, from what I heard from SEC specifically, is that an increase in water would definitely negatively impact them and their structure. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Through you, Mr. President. Yes, we are aware of that, and yes, those increases would negatively impact those customers, or those residents, rather. We have heard most of the communication thus far secondhand, but within the last couple weeks, we are actively scheduling meetings directly with inclusionary residents to have one-on-one conversations with them to understand exactly what they're dealing with, as well as the property managers of those properties, so we can craft our solutions accordingly.
Mr. President, thank you. One more thought, and I will then yield. And thank you for allowing me to have this moment. Just wanted to clarify on page 8 with the other existing assistance programs, the rental utility assistance programs. In a lot of cases, tenants have to be several months behind on their bills to qualify in some of these cases. With the CARES Fund, that's variable. This is the municipal program that's variable. That the taxi voucher program is only available for seniors, and it doesn't really relate to water bills. So I'm trying to understand what this means. The LIHOP, it no longer exists, and over 900 residents were receiving that, and now they're just up in the air and aren't receiving any help with this at all. And in the last bullet point, the assessing exemptions, the bar to qualify for this program, from what I understand from the assessor's office, is extremely difficult to leap over. So it helps less than 200 residents out of an 81,400 residency city. That's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. President, there was, I think, one question in there, what this has to do with water and sewer. The intent of this slide was to start the communication, although as Mr. Vidalis mentioned, a lot more communication needs to be done, but start the communication that there is additional assistance outside of water and sewer. I don't think we want to only communicate what is going on in water and sewer in terms of relief there. If we are aware of other programs that folks can take advantage of and get provided relief, we want to communicate that. Even though we're focused here on water and sewer, our primary goal is equity and affordability in totality, in a holistic view, and we want to make sure to communicate that. The other thing I will mention is that what we have on this slide is LIHEAP, not LIWAP, and LIHEAP is still in effect.
Mr. President, I have one more. Thank you on that comment. I have never heard of this program, and so I'd love to hear more, as residents, I'm sure, would as well. As I've been speaking about this issue for months, this is brand new that I'm hearing about it today. So I'd love to follow up and hear about this, since this is the very first time in all the conversations we've had, especially over the month, that months have heard of this program as well. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. President, I'd be happy to communicate to, just to let you know, that is heating assistance. LIHEAP is heating assistance. It is not water and sewer.
If I may, pardon me, yes. Oh, yes, this program, that's right. That's the program that is through Cambridge and Somerville, correct? Yes, from what I understand with that program as well, that is a very difficult program for many people to qualify for as well, that the bar is very high and not as many people are able to access it as that are in need. But yes, love to talk further about that one. Yes, thank you for clarifying. Yes, I'm aware of that program and happy to follow up and talk about that. Thank you.
Councilor Klingon. Oh, sorry, did I skip Councilor Burnley first? My bad.
Through the chair, thank you. I have a number of questions, some of which are for clarification and some of which I'd like to drill down on what some of these potential recommendations. I'm a little bit at a loss at where to start because there's so much here, and this is such an important conversation for us to be having, and is obviously incredibly consequential, not only for current residents, but this is perhaps a generational change for the city. I do want to drill down on some of the proposed or soon-to-be proposed recommendations. For example, the stormwater fee. Can you elaborate on what that might be? Would that be a fixed rate? Would there be an increase to that fee when there's overflow, which happens, I would say, not infrequently in Somerville?
Through you, Mr. President, I'm not involved in this project, so I can't speak to the specifics, but generally speaking, stormwater fees are usually fixed. They are assessed a lot of times based on square footage or impervious area, square footage of impervious area. And what this would do typically, and I spoke to just at a high level, potentially bringing more equity, highly dense buildings with very low footprint in terms of impervious area. The amount of revenue they're paying towards stormwater mitigation is currently coming from their wastewater bill, and is how much stormwater runoff is there's no indication or no relevance to how much water they're using, and so a stormwater fee will a lot of times, very tall, skinny, multifamily properties or other properties that have a very small footprint in terms of impervious area would meaningfully benefit from paying a stormwater fee rather than paying for those charges through sewer.
Mr. President, if I may add, that is something that we're currently looking into, and Water and Sewer is working closely with engineering and IAM as to developing this program. We're still in the research phases for it, but as Mr. Fox stated, that is generally how these programs work for stormwater fees. It reduces the sewage fee and applies a stormwater fee prorated to the amount of impervious area for the property. So it ensures more equity that way. So the larger properties that have a lot of impervious area would see an increase to proportionately balance things out. And again, zero sum, as was the term used earlier, will be the end result. But
Thank you. Through the chair, similarly, I am curious about the fire protection fee. I believe I understood broadly the type of buildings that this would apply to, but just to put a finer point on it, would these fire protection fees most likely be applied to larger apartment complexes, hotels? I'm curious about where public housing falls into that as well, because in Somerville, these are often much larger complexes. Do you have thoughts on that? Would that be accurate?
Through you, Mr. President. Certainly, the first two examples that you gave, much larger apartment complexes or hotels, large commercial properties typically always have some sort of fire suppression system. We're currently going through a data audit to understand where these fire suppression systems are, and so we can understand at a very definitive level who these customers are that have these and would be impacted by a new charge, because we don't want to implement something without understanding that first. So on the community housing, I can't answer that question yet, but we're working towards being able to answer that for you.
also, through you, Mr. President, additionally, if we would implement this, most likely it would be a flat fee based upon the size and the demand of the fire suppression system. So the size of the fire protection pipe that goes into the building would determine typically a flat fee based on that.
Thank you for providing some clarity there. It is as I thought, and I think, I'll just state that as my colleague at large mentioned, this is something that has caused a great amount of tension in the community, frustration, and just an overall an increase in the cost of living for both homeowners and for tenants. So as much of these fees as we can apply to commercial entities that may have more of a pool to draw from, I think would be, in the best interest of our constituents. Additionally, about the reviewing of the billing system compatibility, my experience with Somerville systems, broadly speaking, is that many of them are old. They are a bit resistant to change. I'm curious how, in your experience, Mr. Fox, how long it typically takes to either upgrade or switch out a system when there needs to be a massive change in the structures, and also if you have any ideas of how much that typically costs to upgrade a billing system.
Through you, Mr. President, it is my understanding that a upgrade or a new billing system will not be required to do what we're talking about doing. So it's just ensuring that customers are categorized correctly, that their property type is recategorized so then that would fit that new property type rate structure. This is not a incredibly lengthy process, but it is something we want to ensure that we get right. So it's not a complete overhaul of your billing system. It's just a modification of how customers or how properties are categorized in your billing system, and then ensuring that they're billed correctly. I'm hesitant to say this, but I don't think that should be any problem at all to get done within the next 6 months.
If I may add, Mr. President, as Mr. Fox alluded, this is more a data quality issue in ensuring the integrity of the data that we have in the system and confirming it is accurate in matching it to the assessor's information so we have the correct parcel types. We don't have any indication that it's not, but we want to double check and make sure we're doing it right, and we want to confirm all the information, and then it's an administrative duty to implement the changes of the rates and so on, which we have worked very closely with the billing software, Munis. We've all heard the name a lot and are familiar with it. They work very well with us. They're responsive, and it's just working with them to help us change the tables in the back end. So it doesn't require a change in software, as Mr. Fox alluded.
Thank you. And through the chair, I'm almost done. I'm also curious. Your presentation mentioned grants for water efficiency investments. Can you just elaborate on who these grants would be for and what they would be going to?
Sure. Through you, Mr. President. This would be a bucket of money through a grant that the city would receive, potentially through the state or the federal government or some other entity, that they could then apply and give property owners either come in and retrofit toilets, retrofit shower heads, fixtures to, again, older fixtures in properties are only going to, they're going to use significantly more water than more modernized low-flow fixtures. And so this money would go towards retrofitting plumbing, fixing leaky pipes, installing or implementing high-efficiency fixtures in properties at no cost to the property owner, to be able to potentially meaningfully reduce the water consumption in the property in and of itself. And just by nature of your predominantly volumetric revenue stream or rate structure, that would in turn reduce bills for those properties if they're using less water on both water and sewer.
Okay, thank you. And you did allude to this earlier, so I appreciate the repetition, although I typically don't like repetition. Finally, I'm just curious, and this is a question more to the director. As counselors, we have a fairly limited jurisdiction around many issues related to the city. I'm curious if you have a sense of which of these proposals are administrative in nature versus would require changes to the ordinances, if any, or additional ordinances.
Through you, Mr. President. Excellent question. The vast majority of these would be administrative. The potentially switching to monthly billing, the ordinance was already approved for change, so we greatly appreciate that and allowing us the flexibility to look into that, and so the result of that would be administrative from here on out. The fees are set by the director, so that I don't believe requires ordinance change. I would have to confirm, though. I don't want to say I'm 100% certain on that one, as well as the miscellaneous fees. Looking for grants is not an ordinance change. It's looking for grants and council acceptance of the grant money and appropriation, such as the LIWAP money that is before you also tonight that we received. So it's mostly administrative based on these recommendations in front of us right now.
Thank you. Through the chair, I thank you for that clarification. I suppose the shifting of the structure to make it more equitable, I was curious if that would require any changes to the ordinance or
Through you, Mr. President, I believe that we would definitely come before you and communicate that with the council before we implement that, and I believe that would just be an acceptance of new rate setting as opposed to an ordinance change altogether. And again, that's something we will double check and ensure we've done our due diligence before we move forward with it and continue our communication with the council on how we are proceeding with that.
All right, thank you. I'll just end by saying this is an incredibly consequential work that you all are doing. I'm thankful for that work. I do not envy your position, and I think it's quite unfortunate that the city finds itself in this position and that our residents are struck with anxiety about the ways that their economic futures are looking generally, but especially regarding their ability to stay here. And I hope we can find a way to do this that is more equitable, that perhaps shifts as much of the burden off of residents onto commercial properties. Yeah, I'll end there. Thanks.
Councillor Klingon, then Councillor Pineda-Newfield. And I want to make sure everyone has a chance to ask questions. We are going to send this committee if we go too much longer, so just keep that in mind. Councillor Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. I just, well, first I just want to say that, I kind of agree with the sort of line of thinking and questioning around what Councillor Wilson was saying. A lot of this is sort of after the fact. I think the double-digit increase rates, I think we need to be able to be nimble as a city with regards to like what we've done and what we maybe should relook at. When inflation really started to become an issue, I think, these rates were already set. I think so it's hit people in a way that's a lot more of a sting, especially in conjunction with the shoring up of the new water meters, what was owed and what they ended up paying. So I think that, somewhere in there lies the answer more than I think we're going to get out of any sort of program going forward. It sounds like most of this is going to be really heavy on the education. That said, through you, Mr. President, the question I have on education was, well, actually, I have a first question about the monthly. So on this page, and I didn't hear it mentioned that if we were to go to a monthly billing cycle, then underneath that it says partial payment. So would this be like where we would go to get a monthly bill, but then you could still have the 4 months to pay, in installments or whatnot, kind of at will, but essentially get it paid by the quarter, or what was in mind with those two statements together there?
Through you, Mr. President. Those 2 bullet points, and I realize now through my spiel that I glazed over partial payments, so I apologize for the confusion that this has caused. Those are 2 very separate and standalone statements. So monthly billing would be, instead of sending your residents currently or your customers, ratepayers bill once every 4 months, they would get a bill monthly, just like they get most of their other bills monthly. The partial payments, currently, ratepayers are able to pay their bills over time. It accrues interest, but they are able to do that. And I don't think through our communication that that's very well known. A lot of times, cities or municipalities will have a formal partial plan policy that is communicated, that, you know, a lot of times a resident will, or a ratepayer will receive a bill that is meaningful and can't pay it, and thinks, well, if I can't pay it in the entirety, I'm just not going to pay it at all, when in fact they can start chipping away at that. And we just want to make that known, that ratepayers can pay their bills over time in partial payments and catch up over time, rather than not paying anything at all.
Okay, so along that line, though, so if we were to keep a quarterly payment situation, but have a monthly statement sent, broke it down by the month, why wouldn't they be then able to pay without accruing any fees or interest if they were to get a bill at the end of January and at the end of February, and then but pay it in that 4 month, in that quarterly block? Could we? I know it's just more paperwork, but ultimately, I think, again, that sort of sticker shock of getting the big, it helps people forecast also, I think. So is that something that could be considered?
Through you, Mr. President, just to clarify, you're asking if you could maintain triannual bills, so billing every 4 months, but then have residents pay that 4-month bill over the next 4 months in even increments? Is that what you're asking?
In the 4 month.
Within
within the 4 months, yeah.
Following 4 months.
The current billing payment period. All right, you know what? Forget about it. The thing I'm trying to get at is, like, maybe the app helps with this. Maybe they can see, a running tally of like what the water is. I'm just trying to avoid some of our older seniors getting a bill that is, that every 4 months, when the idea of doing monthly would be that people could they'd be looking at a smaller bill. So I'm trying to kind of work around going monthly, but then not having to pay fees if they don't pay within the month.
Through you, Mr. President, I understand what you're asking now. That has not been considered to date, but we can certainly take it into consideration.
Okay, and then the thing about the rent.
If I may, Mr. President, also add that would require an ordinance change where the ordinance currently says due dates are set at 45 days. Or 30 or 45 days, depending on the situation. So currently we're using 45 for residential, 30 for commercial.
All right, let's stay on target, folks. This is really, really, really in the weeds.
And then the other thing about the rental, so it really kind of got lost as to whether or not, so you were starting to talk about a renter could, there's certain protections and rules and laws that say, if they're going to be charged for water, I'm sure that there's, whatever those policies look like, we didn't really get into, but what we more got into is that people are just being passed on the charges through rent. So it's not really, doesn't necessarily show as a water bill per se. Is there any sort of like rules on the books about if you do get told that this is because of a water increase, could that be then looked at as, is there any type of protection around that?
Through you, Mr. President, the only protection that I'm aware of, and I'm going to just summarize here at a very high level, and we can get you the details of that Massachusetts sub-metering law, is if the properties or multifamily properties are sub-metered, the property manager is allowed to provide a water bill directly to the tenant. That property owner has to go through certain initiatives to ensure conservation devices are in place and low flow fixtures. The per unit price that a tenant pays, that any tenant pays in any of the units, cannot be higher than the per unit price that the property manager paid for the entirety of the bill. So there cannot be any administrative markup of those bills. They can't just arbitrarily increase one tenant's bill over another's at a higher per unit rate than the property is paying in and of itself.
Okay. I just was asking if there's a way to catch the situations where the landlord is just going up on the rent, and maybe verbally they tell you it's because of the water increase. Is there a way to sort of protect those tenants?
Through you, Mr. President, I'm not sure, but we can certainly look into that.
Because I know they can essentially go up on the rent at any point they want. That's that they're. Okay.
We'll look into that.
Counselor,
okay.
You cannot regulate the increase of rents in Massachusetts, period, for any reason. That's the answer to the
yes,
question.
Mr.
Right?
President, I know.
Landlords can do this. We all know they're screwing over tenants left and right, yeah.
I know, I just had hoped maybe we could figure out a way that, or maybe there was a law in the books that said, once they say to you verbally, and then put it in writing, if this is why they're going up on the rent, if then that could, the rent increase would have to coincide with whatever the, those amounts are. Hey, just, maybe we could put that on the books, all right.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
If only, Counselor. Thank you, Mr. President. I will be brief. Many of my questions have been answered. I just wanted to follow up on my question, Director, about communication into tenants in particular. Thank you for pointing out where you can find information on your website. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, there's a link at the top for residents/landlords, which brings me to a document titled View Sub-Metering Laws for Landlords. So as a tenant, I wouldn't click on that. But when I click on it, it's a 10-page PDF about when can a tenant be billed directly about submetering. Super helpful information as a tenant, but it's not clear that it's specifically for tenants, and it's only in English. I want to come back to Mr. Fox's report about how communication is critically important, ensuring constituents can access information in a way and language they prefer. It's on slide 7. If there's any way that we can get this translated and also updated so that tenants know where to get this information on your website as soon as possible, I think I'm all for quick fixes. I know, the long-term changes will take a while, but making sure people can access this in multiple languages, I think, is critically important. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Mr. President, we're aware of it. We appreciate that input. I'm glad you were able to find it. We will take those into consideration, and we were planning on updating it anyways because the links to the state's website are actually broken. The state changed their websites, so we have to update that document regardless to update those links. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a brief question. So I very much agree with the idea that there is massive confusion between the regular increases of water rates that happen every year and the water meter issues. Did you look at the water meter replacement issues that we've had at all, or that's a side issue that your group did not look at all?
To you, Mr. President. No, that was outside of the scope of our work. We've obviously heard a lot about it, but it's not something that we intentionally dug into. We were more focused on what is going on currently and how those bills are going to change over time and what potentially could be implemented to help year after year after year going forward.
Okay. Well, in the spirit of giving feedback, I would love to learn more about how that process could be done better in the future, because it sure seems like we're just sort of like putting our heads down while we get punched repeatedly and just hoping that the program ends soon enough that we could stop dealing with it. I got an email this week of someone getting a $10,000 water bill. Yeah, I know that the theme is communications. I'm still kind of just like shell-shocked with that we're not out there more forcefully educating folks. I still have people who are saying, I just got a letter in the mail explaining this all to me. I pay my water bill online weeks ago. None of, it's just stuff like this. I don't even know. I guess they email me and I send them to the department. But yes, I agree that is where the frustration is coming from, 99% right now. And I think that that's kind of honestly where we need a little bit more assistance, is my opinion. Director?
Thank you to you, Mr. President. We recognize that with the communication, why we're so driven on improving our communications plan, ensuring we avoid things like this in the future that hopefully we don't have to avoid. Additionally, specifically to meter replacements, unfortunately, the pandemic slowed down the meter replacement, which coincided with the old transmitters stopped transmitting, which convoluted the whole problem. But we definitely have policies in place to ensure that when the life expectancy is approaching for these meters, that we will address replacement prior to their life expectancy ending and avoid having to go to estimates for any extended duration. And hopefully people have learned, if they see that E, the estimated on there, to give us a call so we can address it immediately.
I'm just going to say they have not learned that. An E on the bill is not enough. Councilor Kling, on this point?
Yeah, just a statement, just on your point, is why I'm trying to say that we need to do something now to like ease and undo what's already been done with regards to, the increases that we've had and then all of the mishaps that's what I'm trying to say. This whole thing, probably for people watching at home, is looking like, this doesn't address any immediate of the situation. And, when we get hit with things like inflation and other things, I think we need to be able to respond in kind and, think about maybe making some changes to things we've already done. That's all.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one sentence comment or two. What would you say if I gave you $72 million? Would that help us out? Let us know. Referring to the ARPA funds that we could use for infrastructure. 79, I apologize, I
Councilor
stole
Wilson.
9.
Accepted.
Thank you, Mr. President. To your point about the confusion over this, I'll just say a very simple thing that might help with that is a better breakout of that true-up amount on the billing statements. It's not, it's a little counterintuitive. It's not obvious how much is your actual bill, how much is prior usage. I think that would go a long way. Thanks.
All right. I think we should refer this to committee in case issues come up and we want to discuss them. Thank you both for the presentation. I think despite the fact that the issue punching us in the face is the water meter, this is very important work. Obviously, the folks we hear from are not necessarily the folks who are being treated inequitably by the billing structure, so I look forward to January 1st, 2025. We'll refer this to Public Utilities, please.
Thank you.
Sure. Let's refer this to the Committee on Equity, please. Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you all for your time.
Let's take a recess until 9:10. All right, colleagues, we'll call this meeting back to order. Before we get back to the agenda, I misspoke previously on an item 10.1, the school building sustainability. I sent that to committee. I would like that item to just be approved. Seeing no discussion, that item is approved. Next item, please.
And that will return us to the regular order of business and item 4.1, in order by Councilor Klingon, that the Director of Engineering assess the timing of the traffic light at Main Street and Broadway and consider lengthening the cycle time.
Councilor Klingon.
Send it to traffic and parking, and then waive the reading of item number, the next one, and send it to, I'm sorry, you caught me off guard here. Jeez. We might as well just read it now.
Okay, 4.1 is referred to traffic and parking. 4.2, you want it to refer to the Committee on Rodents?
No. Yes, sorry.
Excellent.
Well, and then waive the reading of 4.3.
Okay, that item is referred to the Committee on Rodents? Or approved?
I'm sorry, Mr. President. Yeah, so the first one, go to and waive it. Well, I was going to waive it and have it go to traffic and parking. The second one, waive the reading, send it to rodents, and then actually 4.3, I would like to take up.
Item 4.3 is an order by Councilor Klingon that the Director of Infrastructure and Asset Management address the structural safety and rodent issues with the city-owned building on Skilton Avenue.
And the next one you can take up at the same time.
And item 4.4 is an order by Councilor Klingon that the Director of Infrastructure and Asset Management devise and share with this council a long-term plan for the city-owned building at 10 Skilton Avenue.
Really quick, Mr. President, thank you through you to colleagues and anybody listening. There is a structure on Skilton Street. I'm not sure that it's actually 10, but there's a building there that we own that nobody knew we own, including our head of asset infrastructure management, which that building is currently infested with rodents, and the integrity of the structure is not sound, and something needs to be done with it. And so this is my response to the constituents around there who have been asking what is happening with the building. I have since talked to staff, and they're aware of the situation and working on it, but I would still like these to go to Housing and Community Development.
You discovered a building owned by the city we didn't know about. Congratulations.
And I was going to make it into the boxing club, but the structure is not sound.
Yeah, if you didn't tell anyone, we could have just done whatever we want.
Yeah, we could.
Those two items are referred to the Housing and Community Development Committee. Councilor Burnley?
Thank you. I think it's 70 Skilton Ave, just to be clear. If you're talking about this? Yeah. I think it's 70, just to be clear.
Okay.
The next item is item 6B, a report of the Committee on Finance, meeting on May 7th, 2024.
Councilor Wilson.
Mr. President, the Finance Committee met Tuesday, May 7th, with 4 of 5 members present. In an hour and 18 minutes, we went through a 13-item agenda. We unanimously recommended that you approve tonight a roughly $250,000 state grant to fund for 2 years a new energy advisor position in the Office of Sustainability and Environment, a sidewalk easement and maintenance license for 599 Somerville Ave, putting $400,000 from free cash into the Emergency Response Stabilization Fund, and then appropriating that same amount to fund a 1-year contract with the Somerville Homeless Coalition to add 10 ADA-compliant beds to the shelter facility in Davis Square. It's at a cost of $109.59 per client per night, if you're curious about the math. Also putting just over $2 million from free cash into the Facility Renovation and Reconstruction Stabilization Fund, and then appropriating that same amount to pay for this summer's renovation work on the Edgerly to reunite the Winter Hill Community Innovation School pre-K and K classes with the rest of that school community. Also an appropriation of $237,468 from free cash to the Public Works Buildings Interior Building Maintenance Account to pay for urgent repairs to Dilboy Pool. We heard from Commissioner Lathan of DPW that the facility sustained damage to its plumbing and electrical systems this winter, and that DPW, as a result, is taking over this work from Parks and Rec going forward to guard against this happening again. The Commissioner and multiple members of the committee spoke about the pool's vital importance to the western half of the city during our our increasingly hot summers. The commissioner said that she is determined to get the pool opened on schedule this summer. I relayed the Ward 7 councilors' concern that a communications plan for the community be in place if it doesn't turn out to be the case that we open that pool on time. Also, recommended approval of an appropriation of $150,000 from free cash to pay for building improvements, including an ADA-compliant bathroom of the new East Somerville Police Substation. I asked about what the policy might be in terms of who would be allowed to use that bathroom. It wasn't yet known. I urged the folks to please speak to the Ward 1 counselor prior to tonight's meeting, so I'm really hopeful that happened. Also, a transfer of roughly $14,000 from the police salaries account to the police special items rental buildings account to pay the remaining FY24 lease payments for the East Somerville Police Substation. And finally, transfers of $1.1 million for DPW's electric bill and $250,000 for their gas bill to fund end-of-year deficits. We were told by Director Spur Knight of DPW that these were the result of prior year price increases, but assured that these higher costs would be factored into the department's FY25 budget. Then, at the end of the meeting, we took up an order of mine and Councilor Scott seeking information on the competitive bidding process for 2 water and sewer contracts, one for the system maintenance and repairs, and another for water main gate valve repair work. These bids were awarded earlier this year for 1-year contracts that have those mutual options to renew in years 2 and 3. The winning system repair and maintenance contract bid was for north of $1.4 million compared to $863,000 roughly currently. That's $576,000 higher, an increase of 2/3. Asked about this dramatic increase, Director Vidalis attributed this to inflation. The winning bid was the only bid. Director Vidalis didn't know why the current holder of the contract, that's Tim Zanelli Excavators, was in attendance but opted not to bid on either contract. Director Vidalis did state that there's nothing substantively different in the new bid requirements from the old ones. Councilor Klingon asked about local storage of equipment, given that the current contractor has physical space here in Somerville, whereas the 2 new contractors, and that's the interesting part, is for these two contracts, they went to 2 different contractors, one in Salem, one in Stoneham, as opposed to being one firm as they currently are. Director Vidalis indicated that the same response time requirements are in place and would apply here as we currently have. And I asked about this future utopia where we have a fully staffed water and sewer department able to do some portion of this work in-house. We were told the contract is actually a maximum amount with no minimum, and therefore in this future where we have water and sewer nicely fully staffed up, we would just need to rely less on outside contractors for that work, and therefore we would pay less for the contract. I closed by just repeating the importance of getting these in-house water and sewer positions filled to save the taxpayers money, as we've just been talking about here. And then we adjourned. So with that, I ask that you accept this committee report as submitted.
Seeing no discussion, that committee report is accepted.
And that puts 3 items before the council for a roll call vote, Mr. President. The first of those is item 24-0565, a pedestrian access sidewalk easement and maintenance agreement for 599 Somerville Ave. On that item, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Said.
Yes.
Councilor Scott. Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 10 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 1 absent, that item is approved. And then we have 2 stabilization fund items. Those are items 24-0578, $2,041,000 from the Facility Renovation and Reconstruction Stabilization Fund for the Edgerly School, and item 24-0580, $400,000 from the Emergency Shelter Stabilization Fund for emergency shelter services. On both of those items, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Said.
Yes.
Councilor Scott. Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 10 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 1 absent, those items are approved.
Excellent.
And the next item is item 6C, a report of the Committee on Housing and Community Development, meeting on May 7th, 2024.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you. Okie dokie. So we met on Tuesday, May 7th, just the other day at 6 p.m. All counselors were in attendance. We were virtual and in person. We had really good conversations on housing ideas, and we talked about the concept of density bonus incentives to prompt and incentivize the ADU stock, the accessory dwelling unit stock in Somerville, potentially as affordable housing, but also just to increase density and offer housing solutions. We had Director Lewis present to discuss that. I do want to clarify in the minutes that no, I do not want to do exactly as New York State and award $50 million to homeowners and nonprofits in Somerville. That number is a little different, so we need to modify that in the minutes. However, I do think that the concept itself is worth exploring further. We kept that in committee. We also discussed fair housing enforcement, and were updated from the housing department of what that looks like and the steps being taken to ensure that's happening, including with the Fair Housing Commission, and what the commission and also housing staff in the city, and I've been present in these meetings too, have been working on is modeling, if we can do modeling what Cambridge and Boston are able to do with their housing enforcement, but it requires home rule petitions in a lot of cases, and also the backlog is being worked through of fair housing complaints. One future step that the city and housing department is not just considering but planning on is working with the communications department so that residents know their rights, can identify housing discrimination and when they should make a complaint and how. That conversation is ongoing. We did mark that work complete. And also, we had a really great order put forward by Councilor Kling, and additionally on credit checks when somebody is awarded through the housing lottery a affordable housing unit, if their credit isn't great, they can actually be rejected from the inclusionary housing program in some cases, and we had members of the housing department talking about this, and with that credit check, sometimes it's further along in the process than just an immediate, your name is called and oops, your credit isn't great, sorry, it goes to the next person. It's sometimes a process, it's the third step in the process, which for people that have their hopes up, it can be crushing. So we had a hearty discussion on that. I encourage you to read the minutes on it. We did mark that work complete. And last on the agenda, we talked about the mitigating commercial displacement in Somerville. We had Senior Planner Ted Fields from Economic Development to discuss this. You can read the minutes on it, and I offer these minutes for your approval.
Excellent. Seeing no discussion, that committee report is approved.
Item 6D is a report of the Committee on Land Use, meeting in joint session with the Planning Board on May 2nd, 2024.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. We did just that, and all members were in attendance. We had one item on the agenda, and that was requestment of an ordainment to the zoning ordinance to move conflicts with the state building code. This has to do with our stretch code and part of Mayor Ballantyne's vision for a carbon neutral, net negative future. We had some discussion on the item. A lot of people showed up to testify testify, mostly developers, to say that this is going to negatively impact their proposed developments. Councilor Davis had some good comments about how this is kind of putting the cart before the horse, and when we discussed this years ago, we were worried about how the stretch code might affect our housing, particularly our density bonus, and this is apparently going to negatively impact that. So we had a little discussion about it, but more discussions to come, and I submit this committee report to be approved.
That committee report is approved.
Item 6E is a report of the Committee on Legislative Matters, meeting on April 30th, 2024.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Legislative Matters did meet on April 30th. We discussed 3 items. The first was some follow-up to the surveillance technology annual reports. The second was a second really good discussion on the proposed ordinance to create a safe streets ordinance to expedite protected bike lanes. We had, as I said, a good substantive discussion on that, and the Councilor Burnley, our policy analyst Salisbury, and Director Rosslin, and the other folks who've been working on that are going to take that discussion back and work on some suggestions. And then finally, this one I want to give a little bit of explanation. We discussed a proposed amendment to the Wage Theft Advisory Committee structure, and the intent here, this was submitted by Councilor Burnley, the intent was to try and help increase the number of folks who are actually serving on the committee. The proposal that was before us was to just correct the name of one. So this ordinance actually names several organizations that would submit a person to serve on the committee. One of those organizations has changed their name, so that was the initial proposed amendment. And then there was another organization that sort of no longer really is in operation, and so the proposal was to replace them with a different one. But in discussion, Councilor Burnley sort of acknowledged that even with these changes, it still likely wouldn't enable the committee to meet due to the quorum requirements. Councilor Scott talked a little bit, because he was a big part of the formation of the committee, and talked about sort of the rationale for having this structure of having a whole bunch of organizations named that would submit someone to participate. At the time, based on a variety of challenges, that was sort of the best approach they could come up with. It has proven to be not as effective as they had hoped, so we sort of collectively agreed, and Councilor Burnley and Scott agreed that they would, the better approach might be to place this one on file, to take a deeper look at the ordinance that created the committee and come up with a better and a more sort of comprehensive plan to restructure it. So that's what's going to happen, and we look forward to a future submission on that. So with that, I request that the report be accepted as submitted.
That committee report is approved.
Item 6F is a report of the Committee on Licenses and Permits, meeting on May 8th, 2024.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, I wasn't there. I just want to take a moment to explain why I wasn't there, so people don't, assume that I fled the country and I'm not doing my job. I had the opportunity last night to speak at the cultural graduation of Emerson College, speaking specifically to students of color and LGBTQ students who are graduating in a few days. And I really cannot pass up the opportunity to do so, especially given the fact that many of these students were recently brutalized by Boston Police Department as part of an encampment at Emerson College, where 118 students were arrested and are currently potentially facing legal penalties as a result of that. And given that this is graduation season in Somerville and all of Greater Boston, I think it's just really important to uplift the struggle that a lot of students are going through right now, and to be present with them as much as we can. But having said that, I would love to pass it to my colleague at large to actually speak about what I heard was perhaps the shortest city council meeting ever.
I think it's sort of tied for short, but in terms of impact, it really can't be overstated. Councilor Mbaugh.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Councilor Burnley, for the good work you're doing. I did not really get a sense of why you were going, why you asked me to step in and chair the meeting, but now, it's very clear that, you really needed to be somewhere else. So we actually, I don't know if it was the shortest, perhaps, but like 7 minutes or so and some change. So we discussed just one item, which we figured out that it wasn't even a new license, that was being requested, but was an old license that needed to add spray painting, to their existing license. So that was approved with President Ewan Campaign and myself in attendance as committee members. And so with that, I ask that the committee report be accepted as presented.
We almost had a committee report longer than a meeting. That would have been the ultimate. That committee report is approved.
Item 6G is a report of the Committee on Open Space, Environment, and Energy, meeting on May 6th, 2024.
Councilor Mba.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also, I think one member was probably missing at this committee. No, you don't. I think, so I think 4 committee members were present. We discussed 3 items: Revis fields, invasive species, and composting. So for Revis fields, Director Rich gave a full explanation of the problem that is delaying the completion of certificate of occupancy for outsider use of the high school fields. There's an issue of state building code compliance with the guardrails that have been installed on the vehicle access ramp. And this is not an obstacle for the high school teams, which get into the fields from the school itself. But outside teams and the public as spectators are unable to get in using the ramp and driveway access. So the sport teams that are trying to plan their summer schedules are being frustrated by the delay. So the city has filed an appeal of the building code question to the State Appeals Board, and this will be heard during the week of May 21st. Ideally, they will rule that the currently installed guardrails are permitted and the occupancy permits can quickly issue. Alternatively, we'll have to wait some physical corrections to the guardrails to have, that be confirmed with the code. So if we have to go this other route, it's going to take more time. And then for the invasive species conversation, the committee received from Green and Open Space the proposal for a new staff position of invasive species manager to be added to the staff with funding for the next fiscal year. This professional specialist will have responsibility for formulating an invasive plant species management plan and coordinating the activities of all the pertinent agencies. So they will coordinate with DPW, Office of Sustainability and Environment, Urban Forestry, and the school department. So our committee members are generally in favor of the ideas of expanding the city's effort to combat the invasive species, and especially engaging with school children and students in this effort. However, the need for this type of professional as part of city staff and the funding for such a position must be considered and decided by the agency in the budget process, and then presented to the council when the context of the full fiscal year, once they've calculated the budget for next fiscal year. So therefore, it's our intention to close this item and wait on any proposals that are presented in the budget deliberations once budget season starts. And then the last item we discussed about composting, but not really discussed because it was our intention to continue the discussion of city-wide composting planning, cost, and calculation for city-wide program, which began last month. However, because the close scheduling of this meeting with the previous discussion, it was too soon for a meaningful update. So we held it open and kept the item open in response for questions for operational alternatives and cost evaluation until a future meeting. I ask that this committee be accepted as presented.
Excellent. That committee report is approved.
Item 6H is a report of the Special Committee on Rules, meeting on May 6th, 2024.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, I was at this meeting, and it was a good meeting. We discussed one item, and that is a rule that is before us tonight to ensure that as a part of our hybrid process, we are being intentional in making sure that that we have accessible meetings by, when you are in the chambers, actually speaking into your microphone, no more from the hallway yelling votes, please. And if you are online, being on camera, if you at all have the possibility to do so. We had an amendment to the initial proposal put forth by Councilor Davis that considered situations in which a counselor may not be able to turn on their video, but is otherwise able to identify themselves and be heard. We have included those in there to ensure that for any potential unforeseen situations, or such as, an unstable connection, counselors may turn off their videos, but the preference of this rule change is that anyone who is participating virtually must be on camera to establish quorum, and during votes in particular. So with that, I ask that this report be accepted.
All right, so we accept the committee report, and that puts the item before us, right?
Exactly right, Mr. President. That puts this item before the council for a roll call vote. It's item 24-0415, amending rules 5, 14, and 27 to allow for remote participation.
Are there any questions on these amendments that are before us? Excellent. Seeing none.
On the item, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Said.
Yes.
Councilor Scott. Councilor Mba.
Yes, please.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 10 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 1 absent, that item is approved.
Excellent. So keep in mind, folks, this means keep your camera on whenever possible for hybrid or virtual meetings. And when we're voting in the chamber, it means to speak into your microphone for your vote for the benefit of the public and our captioners. Thank you all, and thank you to the clerk for proposing those.
That brings us to item 6I, a report of the Committee on Traffic and Parking, meeting on April 29th, 2024.
Councilor Said.
The Traffic and Parking Committee met on April 29th at 6 p.m. with 3 members present. We worked through 6 items. All items were marked as completed, and 1 was kept in committee. Item 1, regarding the timeline for citywide rollout of safety sticks, it will be up and running in the next 3 weeks. Item 2, regarding the plans to address increased cut-through commuter traffic on Temple Street and Fellsway West on weekday mornings. Director Rawson shared that speed humps on Fellsway West will be completed this year. Additionally, he stated that Mass DOT is doing lane reduction work through constructing large curb extensions and the bike lanes along Mystic. The Mystic and Fellsway curb extension will reduce the speed of turning vehicles entering Fellsway West. Item 3, about returning the temporary parking sign that serves local businesses to the corner of Washington and Myrtle Street. Director Rawson stated that according to his office investigation, there have been no changes to Myrtle Street in recent years. He added that he will check with Councilor McLaughlin to understand the intent of this order and also to ensure that no damage has been done. So we hope the director reached out to Councilor McLaughlin. Item 4, preserving McGrath Highway footbridge. Director Rawson stated that one challenge to preserving the pedestrian footbridge is that the bridge is not compliant with federal ADA law. The slopes are too severe for people with mobility assistance devices. In order to bring the bridge into compliance with accessibility law, it would need to be widened and lengthened, which would impact a local playground green space. When asked by Councilor Wilson if it would be possible to extend the use of the bridge for as long as possible during the McGrath project construction, Director Rawson stated that this ask can be submitted by the city as part of a public comment, and that Mass DOT will determine the feasibility of this request. Item 5, about providing an update on efforts to ticket vehicles with illegal parking. This was kept in committee. There was no staff member from SPD to speak to it. Last item, on plans to refresh worn and missing pedestrian crosswalk pavement markings on South Street between Medford Street and Windsor Street. We learned that the work will be completed in the next month or two. With that, I ask that you accept this committee report as submitted.
Excellent. That committee report is approved. Councilor McLaughlin.
Just quick on that item, Mr. President. So first of all, Director Rawson is very aware of this, so I talked to him. I didn't talk to him since this last meeting, but in the meeting, I acknowledged that Myrtle Street was the wrong street and asked it to be amended to Florence Street, so that might be where the confusion is. So I'll get to the bottom of it. Thank you.
Excellent.
Mr. President, could I move to waive the readings of items 7.1 to 7.10 and ask these be sent to Finance? Thanks.
Those items are referred to the Committee on Finance.
Item 7.11 is a request of the mayor requesting approval of the proposed 2024 to 2028 Department of Housing and Urban Development 5-year consolidated plan, 1-year action plan, and community participation plan for community development block grant, home investment partnership, and emergency solutions grant programming.
CDBG, that item is referred to HCD.
Item 7.12 is a communication of the mayor proclaiming that the city of Somerville recognizes the month of May 2024 as Older Americans Month.
Excellent. That item is placed on file. Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, I do also just want to acknowledge, given that we are in a wonderful month, and the Director of Water also mentioned that this is Drinking Water Week, that this is also the inaugural Trans History Week as well, which goes from May 6th to May 12th. And as we are soon to be in June, I think it is appropriate that we celebrate the trans members of our community as quickly as possible, and particularly in this week. So thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7.13 is a communication of the mayor proclaiming that the city of Somerville recognizes the week of May 5 through 11, 2024 as Drinking Water Week.
So recognized. That item is placed on file.
Item 7.14 is the mayor's communication conveying information related to item 24-0455, an update on police and fire hiring.
This is the item that was presented to us at our last meeting. That item is placed on file.
Item 8.1 is an officer's communication from the city clerk requesting confirmation of the appointment of Melissa Ripley to the position of assistant city clerk.
That item is referred to confirmation of appointments.
Item 9.1.
Councilor Burnley. Oh, I should say, Melissa Ripley is in the room. Welcome, attending our first meeting. Welcome aboard. Anyone can make a motion at any time.
Can I motion to approve the thing that was just said? Thank you. Say it like that.
Item 9.1.
There's a motion to approve item 8.1.
Oh, got it.
Yes. Discussion on the motion. This is on the confirmation of appointment of Melissa Ripley to the position of Assistant City Clerk. Councilor Brumbaugh.
Thank you for the recognition, Mr. President. I enthusiastically, support Melissa Ripley to the position of Assistant City Clerk.
All right. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, that motion is approved. You're confirmed. Yeah. We have the big book.
Got to roll with the city council punches.
I don't have you raise your right hand for me. you solemnly affirm that you will faithfully perform the duties incumbent on you as Assistant City Clerk for the City of Somerville, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
All right, then you're going to sign right next to where your name is printed. And that's it. Congrats.
Welcome aboard. All right, Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, I would like to waive the readings. I would like to rave against the machine. I would like to waive the readings and move for approval of items 9.1 through 9.10, as well as 10.4 through 10.12, with the exception of items 9.5 and 10.6, which I would like to go to licenses and permits. And I believe the clerk is aware of those items.
Excellent. Those items are sent to committee and approved as noted. Papa John's going to committee.
The clerk did have some trouble processing it in that manner, so give me just a second. Okay, so the next item then will be item 9.11, a public communication from 14 registered voters requesting a zoning map amendment to change the zoning district of 136 School Street from UR to MR6, 95 Highland Avenue from NR to MR6, and 97, 99 to 99A, 101 to 103, and 107 Highland Avenue from MR5 to MR6.
Excellent. This item is referred to land use with a copy to the planning board.
Item 9.12 is a public communication from 14 registered voters requesting a zoning map amendment to change the zoning district of 228, 230, 232, 234, 236 Pearl Street from MR4 to MR6.
That item is referred to the Land Use Committee with a copy to the Planning Board, and unless there's objection, let's waive the reading of 9.13 to 9.15 and place those items on file.
Item 10.2 is a communication by Councilor Wilson conveying a report of the Police Chief Selection Committee.
Councilor Wilson.
Mr. President, I've got a report, not an update, a very important distinction from the Police Chief Selection Committee. There's a longer form memo uploaded into the public record and Legistar for everyone to read. I'm happy to report the PCSC finished our work today by conducting finalist interviews. That decision is now in the mayor's hands, but she has asked for the community's input. So please, colleagues and the public, go watch the videos of the finalist interviews on the city's website and fill out the feedback form to share your thoughts with the mayor ahead of the deadline next Thursday, May 16th, as she goes about appointing our next police chief. And just in case folks aren't aware, this appointment will come before this council for confirmation. The ordinance also requires us to receive a copy of the 3 to 5 year contract negotiated with the appointee, as well as a report on the candidates deemed less qualified. I'll just quickly thank my fellow members of the committee and city staff for moving quickly through this process in just 6 weeks. So here's to a good outcome.
Thank you, Councilor Wilson.
Item 10.3 is a communication by Councilor Wilson in his capacity as Chair of the Finance Committee, conveying an outline of the fiscal year 2025 budget review process.
Councilor Wilson.
Mr. President, it's hard to believe budget season is nearly upon us again, but the mayor's proposed FY25 budget is scheduled to drop in just 2 weeks from tomorrow, and the kickoff of meetings on that budget is just 3 weeks from tonight, when the mayor presents her budget to us in a special meeting in this chamber. This item contains a memo in Legistar with the full schedule, including dates, start times, the meeting type, location, committee composition, as in like just the Finance Committee or Committee of the Whole, and even specific departments for each night. So I'd encourage you all to look that over and mark your calendars accordingly. We're going with a really similar approach to last year, including the ability for councilors to ask pre-submitted questions via a form ahead of time, allowing directors to provide full written answers ahead of their departmental hearing, thereby making the best possible use of our meeting time. As always, I'm here to answer any questions anyone has about this. You all know how to get a hold of me. Thanks.
Budget season. Thank you. That item is placed on file.
Item 10.13 is a public communication from 14 registered voters requesting a zoning text amendment to amend the zoning ordinances to add Section 8.4.19, Somerville Innovation Sub-Area.
Excellent. This item is referred to the Committee on Land Use with a copy to the Planning Board.
And item 10.14 is a public communication from 15 registered voters requesting a zoning map amendment to include 8 Park Street, 10 Park Street, 504 Somerville Ave, 7 to 9 Perpersey Way, 15 to 27 Perpersey Way, 29 Perpersey Way, 26 to 32 Park Street, 8 to 14 Tyler Street, 40 Park Street, 15 Dane Street, 7 to 9 Tyler Street, 30 Dane Street, 24 to 28 Dane Street, 460 Somerville Ave, 444 Somerville Ave, 440 Somerville Ave, and 502 Somerville Ave in the Somerville Innovation Sub-Area.
That item is referred to Land Use with a copy to Planning Board. Councilor Wilson.
Mr. President, sorry, 1010 got sent to, the reading was waived and it was sent to committee already, I'm guessing. Councilor Burnley. The Porch Fest.
It was approved.
Approved. Okay. Can I just say something really quickly on that then? Mr. President, this weekend is Porch Fest. While I'm personally really looking forward to it, I know some members of our community have had some negative experiences in recent years due to some public drunkenness, some unacceptable behavior. I just want to plead with the public to keep it together this weekend. Use the porta potties, not people's yards. Don't be out in the street with open containers, and that includes red Solo cups. Comply with our public safety officials. Don't blow this. We want to keep doing Porch Fest. And to anyone trying to drive through Somerville during Porch Fest, maybe consider sticking to the main arterial streets, or better yet, leave the car at home and walk, bike, or take the T. There are more streets closed this year to vehicular traffic, so definitely plan on your trip taking longer if you drive, and pack some extra patience. Road rage, as always, remains completely unacceptable. Here's to a safe and happy Porch Fest.
I co-sign all of that, and I also wonder the Venn diagram of people who publicly urinate and get intoxicated at Porch Fest and who are watching a city council meeting at 9:51 p.m. on a Thursday. I'm not sure they overlap, but for the folks who do both, please listen to Councilor Wilson. Is there any late items?
That brings us to the end of the agenda for the evening, Mr. President, and there are no further items before the council.
Excellent. Colleagues, we are adjourned. Have a great weekend.